Welcome to the 517th in our series of Distinguished Speaker programs. My name is Cindy O'Connell, and I have the privilege of serving as your club president. Now, it is my sincere privilege to introduce the chairman of our organization, Mr. Ben Watkins, who will introduce our distinguished speakers. Mr. Watkins.
So Chris Emanuel is the Director of Infrastructure and Governance at the Florida Chamber, and he's gonna lead the discussion dealing with autonomous vehicles. So Christopher, in his job at the Florida Chamber, is a primary advocate for transportation, energy, and telecommunications issues. He also leads Autonomous Florida, which is a coalition of business interests to promote autonomous vehicles in the state. So Chris's goal is to have the state of Florida be the epicenter for autonomous vehicles, and he's working on that. He serves on both Florida Department of Transportation's Plan Committee and the U.S. Chamber's Autonomous Vehicle Working Group. And Christopher writes and lectures on policies and politics of technology. He got his undergraduate degree at the University of Florida and his law degree here at FSU. So he's playing both sides, and the ends against the middle. So Christopher's going to do, and I'd like to give a shout out to Frank Collins. Frank Collins has been in Governor Scott's administration, Director of Communications, and also an advocate and substantive expert around transportation. And I called Frank to say, who can you get to come talk about autonomous vehicles? So Frank was our connection to Grayson Brulte, who we recruited from California to come talk to us today. His most recent development is he's moved down to Palm Beach, so he's now a Florida resident. But I warned him about not bringing any contagions from the left coast to Florida. We don't need anything that they do with the land of fruit and nuts, except technology. So we welcome Grayson. He's been an advisor to a number of autonomous vehicle startups. He's seen firsthand the development and evolution of autonomous technologies. He's recognized nationally and has written on the subject and has been featured in the Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, LA Times, and Forbes magazine. So Grayson regularly speaks in front of national and international audiences about autonomous vehicles and their impact on society. So if you stop and think about it for a minute, there are big changes coming, and coming very quickly, in incorporating technology into the way that we move goods and the way we move people. And with the likes of Google and Uber and Tesla and all of the household names in the automotive industry focused on this effort, it's not a question of if it's going to happen. It is. It's just a question of when. And that's what we're working on now. Grayson has been at the vanguard of and the epicenter of where technology is developed. We're fortunate to have him as a Florida resident now. So I just Googled it quickly, and Walmart has a pilot program with Waymo and UDEV to deliver groceries to their stores in Arkansas. Domino's Pizza's got a pilot program delivering pizzas in Houston. The U.S. Postal Service is running their big rigs with Too Simple, running mail between Phoenix, Arizona, and Dallas. So it's going on now, currently. And so I can't wait to hear what Grayson shares with us today about how this technology is illuminating. These are companies I've never heard of. And so without further ado, Christopher, Grayson, the stage is yours.
Just thrilled to be here, and thank you, Grayson, for coming and joining us at the Economic Club of Florida. We heard a long list of AV companies throughout the country, but I don't think many people in the room may know about the AV companies here in Florida. Could you give us a bit of an overview of who's doing what in the Sunshine State?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me here, but most importantly, thank you to every person in the state for welcoming my family and myself here. Every person that we've met in Florida has just welcomed us with open arms, so thank you so much. and we're happy to be out of the land of fruits and nuts, as Ben said. But don't worry, that's it at the California border. But it's really interesting because Florida's created this really interesting environment where you're allowing businesses to thrive, you're not regulating businesses out of business, you're not putting undue taxes on it. And one of the most prominent companies operating here in the state of Florida is Voyage. Voyage is a California-based startup in Palo Alto founded by Oliver Cameron, who is the former head of self-driving cars at Udacity, which is online learning. Udacity is interesting because it was founded by Sebastian Thrun, who was considered the godfather of self-driving cars. He led the DARPA project for Google and Larry Page. And so I'm an advisor to Voyage, and Oliver approached me and said, well, you're friends with folks in Florida, California won't let us operate, who could you introduce us to? And so we set Oliver up with the villages, and they're operating a service in the villages to move individuals around the villages. And I'm proud to tell everybody that next year at the villages, they will be removing the driver. Voyage will be operating without a driver in the villages, which is a big deal. Last week, Oliver was very kind to host me at the villages, and we were able to speak with the villagers. And the number one thing is, where can I do this? When can I get this? And there's this really big enthusiasm. They're building their business in Florida.
In addition to Voyage and Villages, we've got 5 other public deployments across the state. Could you touch on kind of the different use cases that we're seeing?
Sure. So if you look at Miami-Dade County and downtown Miami, Ford's first deployment was not in Detroit, was not in Dearborn, it was in Miami. That was due strictly to the regulatory environment. So Ford is operating a fleet of Argo self-driving cars now as a test fleet, and they'll be turning them into a commercialized fleet. The other really exciting thing, 2 weeks ago in Central Florida, Starsky Robotics, which is a self-driving truck startup, did the first ever test of an unmanned 18-wheeler on a public road with no safety car. So there was nobody in the cabin when the truck was going down the road, and that happened here in Florida. And you're going to see all sorts of innovations and breakthroughs happen here in Florida because of the political background and the willingness of the elected officials to actually allow you to innovate instead of putting burdens and regulations on you.
I think one thing that's pretty surprising about this policy area is how bipartisan it's been in Florida. House Bill 311, which modernized our regulatory structure, passed unanimously out of the Florida House of Representatives. You can't get a unanimous vote in DC on another state resolution. So can you talk a little bit about what Florida's regulations do, what other states do, and why it may be a competitive advantage?
The biggest competitive advantage to Florida versus California law that now being built is you can legally charge to put a passenger in a self-driving car in Florida, where in California you cannot charge a person. Furthermore, you cannot accept a donation. So if you have Google, as they said on their earnings call last week, is spending $1.5 billion a year in research on Waymo, they cannot recoup one single penny operating in the state of California. So what Waymo Google did, they moved all the operations to Arizona where they can charge. But the big difference is that's not talked a lot about. A lot of companies are operating in Arizona, such as Too Simple, which Ben mentioned. But here in Florida, it was an act signed of legislature, where in Arizona's an executive order. So when Ducey's term as governor is over, the next governor with one stroke of the pen can kill the entire industry. We're here, that can't happen, which is really remarkably special.
You talked about some of the exciting startup companies. Let's take a moment to talk about some of the incumbent companies that we may not think about being AV companies. Companies like Walmart or Amazon. What are you seeing in those large retail environments?
Walmart's awesome. Walmart does not get enough credit for being innovative. And if you look at under the leadership of the current CEO of Walmart, they bought Jet.com. Wall Street was hammering Walmart, oh, you're not innovating on e-commerce, you're not doing anything. They buy Jet.com, and then all of a sudden their e-commerce sales start booming. They're not hitting the profit margins that they're wanting to achieve, but they still are generating profit where Amazon's losing the majority of not even those economic profit targets. Where Walmart says, okay, we're going to have more drone patents than anybody because we want to figure out what we can do with drones. And then furthermore, Walmart says, we operate the largest trucking fleet in America. So what can we do to automate that fleet and prepare for it? So they're making investments in companies doing partnerships. One of the most prominent investments that Walmart's made is with a company called Gatic AI. And GAC AI is really interesting because the other investor is a gentleman by the name of Eric Schmidt, who's the former CEO and chairman of Google. It was the first investment that Eric Schmidt has ever made in a self-driving car company. And Walmart earlier this week announced they're running 3 miles completely autonomous in Bentonville. And that happened because the Arkansas legislature passed a law allowing self-driving cars. And so Walmart is actively preparing for how do we automate our large 18-wheelers, and then when we get them to depots, we can put them into smaller Ford Transit vans. And that's going to become really interesting, as you mentioned, Texas. It's a company called Neuro. Neuro's raised $900 million from the SoftBank Vision Fund 1 to operate. They're building custom delivery vehicles, and it's operating in partnership with Kroger. Version 1 of the Neurobot can go 25 miles an hour. Version 2 of the Neurobot is going to go about 40 miles an hour. They'll be completely autonomous with no driver. And so you're seeing these really interesting partnerships between venture community, traditional big box retailers, and the startups.
There's a lot of different markets that people are looking at in autonomous vehicles. There's the delivery side, there's the personal use, but one of the ones that I think is the clearest business case is long-distance trucking. Could you touch on a little bit about what the future of trucking might look like across the I-10 corridor?
Sure. So the future of trucking is that there's no longer a driver shortage. Today, you see the United States Trucking Association coming out saying we have a driver shortage. We cannot keep up with all the e-commerce demand. And there's this whole debate that goes on, oh, autonomous trucks are going to put truck drivers out of business. They're not necessarily going to put truck drivers out of business. They're just going to reclassify the job, and they're going to have different job training. And TU Simple is doing job training with Pima College in Mesa, Arizona. They're saying, okay, you're a truck driver, we're going to train you how to fix the hardware on the trucks. How did you work on the edge cases? Because in order to get the trucks to learn to drive themselves, you have to have a human driver. And so they're hiring the best truck drivers. And then for edge cases, you will have remote warehouses such as Starsky has in the Orlando area, where you'll have a remote driver that will sit there. And they'll work in 3 shifts and they'll be there 24/7. So instead of driving across the country in the I-10 corridor, you'll go in, you'll work your 8-hour shift, and you'll go home, you'll come back, and you'll remotely drive the truck. And it's just, we really have to understand with the job training aspect of it, because the trucking skill is highly in demand. Some companies are paying $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 for the top truck drivers to go to these startups, before you can get to your equity bonuses. And it's just, we really have to start training drivers to understand that this technology is coming, you're still in demand, here's the skills that you're going to need to learn.
Grayson, I think you touched on 2 really interesting trends. The first is the idea of teleoperating, which is when a car or vehicle can be operated remotely, much like a drone is in some branches of the military. The other side is the machine learning aspect of these algorithms that have to have human input. Could you start with the machine learning and why we need that human input and driver input, and then maybe let's talk a little bit about the remote driving?
Sure. So when a vehicle running down the road, running on neural network or artificial intelligence, it doesn't know that that's a ball, that's a child, that's a wrench. And so you still have to have humans to create labels and label different objects for the algorithm to learn. And as this technology evolves, we have edge cases. You constantly have to have labeling to train the algorithm, the AI. And that's really, really, really important that we get there. And then as it relates to remote driving, there is scenarios where the truck cannot handle certain circumstances. Some self-driving cars, for example, where trucks have problems with railroad tracks, railway crossings. And there's the remote truck driver can then take over there and remotely drive it, kind of similar to a PlayStation. You can remotely drive the truck safely with all the cameras. And then different edge cases. And so you're kind of basically, you have a safety driver, but he's not in the truck. So it's really interesting, so that individual then can go home and then can go to church on Sunday, be part of this community without having to be gone days and weeks at a time. And if you think about the family unit, when a parent can be a long-haul truck driver and they can still go home with the family, and I think that will have a really positive impact on the community.
I think it's an interesting idea that the concept of a long-distance truck driver that's based in one county, pulling loads off of an interstate van and delivering around and doing that customer-facing. But you touched on one point that is probably worth discussing, is what impact could this have on the family unit? So let's fast forward a half-decade or so. What kind of things would a person or a family use an AV for?
Families are going to use an AV. There's a lot of, with a couple scenarios, you're going to have entertainment, you're going to have delivery of goods, and then you're going to have taking kids to school. So let's start with the children's aspect. And so today, some families are designed for a one-car family, and we're always, who gets the car to go where. I only have one child, but some of my friends have 3 or 4 kids, and then this one has ballet practice, this one has baseball practice, and you have to figure out where to go. In the future, it's going to be really neat. You'll subscribe to an autonomous vehicle, and kind of similar to Apple Music or Spotify or Netflix. You'll be able to, you can watch 2 movies at a time, 3 movies at a time. You can have multiple vehicles out at a time, so you can put one of your children to go to baseball, one of your children to go to ballet, and the other to go to theater practice in the vehicle. And the really interesting thing about it is when there's no driver, I believe that as a parent, you'll be the only one to open the door. And so when the child gets into a geofence zone and the camera turns on, you say, oh, you can see the coach or you can see the teacher, you're the only one that can unlock that door. And so if you're putting your child in a car today with Uber driver or Lyft driver, you don't know, you're entering into a possible sense of danger. That driver could do something that's highly inappropriate. Where if you're putting them into a vehicle with no driver and they can't necessarily open the door if they're in a safer environment, you're really going to see that take off. And then I think if you look at the other aspect of children, if you look at a single mother or a single father that's living in an area and there's a museum on the other side of town but they can't afford to get there, I believe you'll have at that point subsidized transportation. You can put that child in the vehicle and take them to the museum, and then if this child wanted to go and continue that, they could go learn all these different educational aspects. Or if, or I used to live in California, I noticed a lot of children ever went to the desert, everyone understood the desert ecosystem. And so that mom can go with her children out to the desert for the day and experience the ecosystem and come back and they think about the impact that will have on the child's imagination. What will be unlocked with that child? And the big difference is, if that same mother is doing this, she might not have credit, she might not have a credit card, so she can't rent a car or afford to pay for the gas. But with the autonomous vehicle, without the credit check, she can go there and go for that thing, because the vehicle can't be stolen, because there's no pedals, there's no way for you to take over the vehicle, so that credit risk of loss really goes away, and it opens up the whole debate about giving rides to those that are unbanked. It becomes interesting. The other aspect is entertainment. I think it's really interesting. I'm a big fan of Walt Disney as a 5-year-old daughter. I'm all about Minnie Mouse and Mickey Mouse. And there's a lot of hype where Bob Iger was very savvy when he bought Lucasfilm. And they built Star Wars Land, which opened in Disneyland in California, and it's been this really incredible line, and it was really big demand and all different experiences. But the one thing is when it comes to the great state of Florida, and I learned this a month ago, the MCO apparently stands for Mickey's Corporate Office. And that was pretty interesting as a parent. You know all about that. And Disney now has their Magical Express, but if you read the patent filings that Disney's made around their new Star Wars hotel, I believe that in the future you'll be picked up at the airport and the Millennium Falcon, you'll be in an autonomous vehicle, full level 5, with no pedals, no steering wheel, and the Millennium Falcon will pick you up. You'll go in this vehicle, you'll kind of go into that Star Wars world, so your experience will start the minute you land at the airport, take you there. And then when you're pulling up to that hotel, you'll be landing in the world, so you're still immersed in this whole Star Wars experience. So Disney's taking the experience of Disney World and moving to capture those dollars. And when you're in a vehicle, Disney being really great is, oh, we can sell you merchandise, and we can upsell you on things, and they start to create this really wonderful experience. And it's legal here in Florida, but you can charge for a ride, you can create these experiences.
You're talking about a lot of sci-fi things there, Star Wars, Millennium Falcons, and entertainment. But you've got a pretty unique perspective when it comes to public acceptance and whether or not people will actually hop into space-age technology. Can you talk a little bit about SAE, the demo days, and what kind of data you're getting from those?
Sure. So SAE is formerly known as the Society of Automotive Engineers. It was founded by Henry Ford, Orville Wright, and Thomas Edison. And they came together and said, how do we standardize all these different processes that we want to do? And SAEs come to Florida, Tampa, and Babcock Ranch, and hosted self-driving car demo days. We thank you for partnering with the Chamber at Babcock. where we want to put the public in the car before and after the ride to survey what do you really think. Because you read all these different polls and headlines from organizations. The public's scared of self-driving cars. The public doesn't understand this. And we had a conversation at our table over lunch about what's going on in Cape Cod about great white sharks and how you're more likely to get hit by lightning, which we know that as a fact, but the public sees the headlines and gets scared. And so we said, okay, what's the real data here? Is it really the public scared of it? It turns out 82% of the individuals that have been for a ride in a self-driving car this day want the technology today. And it runs counteractive to everything that's in the marketplace. But it's allowing them to go in the vehicle, experience that technology has just been really tremendous.
One thing that may be worth talking a little bit about is not only timelines, but where the technology is today. Could you tell us a little bit about what tasks are already being able to be automated using existing technology? What kind of things are a little bit further away, and one that may be 10 or so years apart?
Sure. So we're in inning one of the 9-inning baseball game. We have begun to explore extra innings today. The vehicles that you're seeing today are primarily Lincoln MKZs, Ford Fusions, and Chrysler Pacific Advance. All the vehicles have been modified, which are called drive-by markets. So that's why those vehicles are used, because they're drive-by only. Those vehicles are just basically, which we call in the industry, are called mules. They're just testing to understand the technology and perfect the algorithms. The vehicles that will actually be deployed on roads will be more than likely custom built. There's a company out of Redwood City, California called Zoox, and they said, we're going to completely build a new vehicle from the ground up. And so instead of everybody facing forward, you'll have two individuals here and two individuals here, and you'll face one another. And it's really interesting what Zoox has done. They figure out audio engineering in the car. So if you're in this seat, you're in this seat, you hear two completely different things. And it's just this really wonderful experience. And there's other companies that are building cars without pedals and without steering wheels that are facing forward, such as the GM Cruise. But when you talk to the public, like, okay, well, I have no steering wheel, I have no pedals, why do I necessarily want to face forward? I want to have an experience in the vehicle. And so when you're facing in and the seat swivel, you can start to unlock the experiences. And so individuals ask all the time, well, what self-driving car company do I invest in? Well, this is that. And the truth with the self-driving car companies is, so it's going to be a race to the bottom. So it's going to say, okay, who can make the cheapest self-driving car? And then it's going to go, okay, we're going to go, who can subsidize more than another? And so when you build a car from the ground up, you unlock all the services. And that's going to be really interesting too. What can you build on top of the self-driving car to have that experience, similar to what we talked about with Disney? And that's where the really big wins are going to come from.
You probably have a better idea more than just about anybody else of the size of this market, how much investment is going into these companies, how many people are working on these teams. Could you give this economic club a sense of how big of a market we're talking here?
It's going to impact every single person in America within the next 25 years. Will have some sort of felt the impact from townspeople's time as well.
Let's talk a little bit about how that may impact the way that real estate works, that cities work. What are some of the things that cities should be doing today to prepare when they're building infrastructure that's going to last 30, 40, 50 years, and we can expect to see autonomous vehicles on the roads maybe in 10 or 20 or 30 years?
And you have to look at what is the future with autonomy. What's going to happen to the parking garages? And we talked about the different ceiling heights and the different levels of grade. But the more important aspect is what's going to happen with the car space. I think that's going to be really interesting. A lot of cities now are pushing towards putting bike lanes in. They're extending cafes out into the streets. But there's at some point where you build an extra 3 feet or 4 feet, you make that an autonomous delivery lane. You really have to look at widening the road to put all these different aspects on it. And then if you're building a commercial building in a city, I think it's really important now to have the conversation about eliminating the parking requirement. And so if there's, like if you're Hanover, for example, if you take that and say, okay, well, he says about $25,000 extra on the price of his condo for the parking spot. But for his HOA fee, if you raise your HOA fee by, say, $100 a month, $150 a month, and then put in a car sharing service, and say, okay, Chris, we're going to partner with Share now, which is a joint venture between Mercedes and BMW, And part of your HOA, you're going to have unlimited access to a BMW and a Mercedes as part of your ownership of your HOA. That becomes really interesting. So now you're less inclined to get the car. And then for you, your insurance includes your cost of operating, and that really goes down.
I think there was a point buried in there that was kind of crucial. The average cost of an above-ground parking spot in the United States bill is about $25,000 per space. For an underground parking spot, you're looking at about $35,000 per space. And so the economics of the parking garage starts looking a little bit different. We talked a little bit about the builds that are going in with JetBanks properties in Tampa and Miami. Could you touch on what people are thinking when they're building parking garages today?
They're thinking, how do I not lose my shirt? I mean, that's what it's coming down to. They want to figure out, okay, what can I convert this into? If you're a hotel, for example, do you build a garage high enough for you at some point to convert it to a ballroom? Because ballroom is the most profitable aspect of a hotel. And if you're building for a city, that's a completely different story. So really good about use case.
All right, I think I've got a few more questions, and we'll probably be taking some questions from the audience in about 5 minutes, so certainly get ready for that. What are the threats to autonomous vehicles that we should be worried about in the next 10 or 20 years, and what things should we do to prepare for AVs?
There's a debate that goes on that in DC, we started with the AV Star Act. It's really the federal government at this point is one of the biggest threats because of all the misconceptions and these certain interests that are trying to derail and things into bills. That is a huge, huge issue. I believe that we can get over that hurdle. But the number one hurdle is the public acceptance and adoption. If the public decides that they don't like this technology, they don't want this technology, my industry is completely bankrupt in that business. And the industry really has to come together to work with elected officials, both on state and federal level, and with the public, and pull back the curtain and explain the technology to them and how this works, instead of just magically showing up one day and saying, biddity boppity boop, this car is going to drive itself. It's really public education is the number one biggest hurdle more than anything right now.
I think there's a push that you're seeing in the industry of self-certification for other entities to take up the role of what traditionally would be the federal government when it comes to safety and reliability. Could you touch on some of those efforts with a focus on maybe what Munich Reinsurance is doing?
Sure. So Munich Re, the world's largest insurance company, insures about roughly 80 to 90% of the autonomous vehicles on the road today. They developed a new program which they announced 2 weeks ago called A-Verify. And so if you're putting a vehicle on a road, they're going to come in and do an audit and certify that you say what you're doing with your processes and say this vehicle is safe. And so if you're a startup company and you're meeting with an elected official, you can say, look, I had an audit, I'm meeting all the processes. And with the self-certifications, it becomes a really big deal because NHTSA is asking for National Highway Transportation Safety is asking for self-certification, but it's not mandatory. And the insurance companies coming and saying, well, we have a lot more to lose on that instead of the certifications. And when those companies that have the certification met with policymakers, it's been a really big positive difference.
Relative to the rest of the country, where is Florida? Where should Florida expect to be in the next 5 or 10 years? And what are our state elected officials and policymakers and business people doing in that space?
Sure. So Florida is leading by far the numero uno state when it comes to all things autonomy. In the United States, from a global perspective, is the number one, in my opinion, number one place in the world to build an autonomous vehicle company, to deploy autonomous vehicle services to scale. Florida has one thing that a lot of states don't have. You have leadership with elected officials. There's one elected official who's become a good friend, and he's one of the recent one here, Senator Reyes. And he is constantly pushing the envelope of how do you allow companies to innovate, how do I remove all the regulatory hurdles to allow it to happen. And then Florida's had 2 really great governors with Governor Scott and Governor DeSantis saying, we want innovation to prosper, we want innovation to thrive. And it's remarkable that the state is willing to sit down with an individual or a company and say, okay, how do we work together? And instead of saying, throwing the book out, this is what you're going to do. If you don't like it, well, we're California, that's the end of this. And it's really refreshing. Just the leadership and the warmness and the welcomingness up and down the state of what they're doing to have this industry thrive here. And if you look at what they're doing, think of all the jobs they're creating.
What do you think we can expect to see in the next 5 or 10 years in the autonomous vehicle community in Florida? Do you believe we're going to have more deployments, or are we going to see some public-facing ones? What does the future look like?
You will have multiple deployments in Miami in 5 years, probably closer to 2. You will have the public in self-driving cars in Miami paying fares in under 2 years. Orlando closer to 5 years. I would say 5 to 7 in the Tampa area. But yeah, you're going to have companies that are going to be able to generate revenue and create jobs here.
One last question before we turn it over. What kind of partnerships do you expect with existing travel options like airlines or existing restaurant chains or entertainment or theme parks? What opportunities are there in the AV space for people who aren't necessarily in AVs?
Well, the airlines are really, really interesting. If you kind of look at what Richard Anderson is the former CEO of Delta and now CEO of Amtrak, and he's looking at all the different lines of Amtrak of, what are the profitable lines and non-profitable lines, and show you how the non-profitable lines devote to the profitable lines. It's some of the things going to happen with airlines. So airlines is able to run from Palm Beach to Tallahassee is not necessarily profitable, so let's offer autonomous vehicle service to supplement that. And then you're also going to see airlines where they're going to say, okay, Grayson, we're going to pick you up at your house and we're going to take you to the airport, and we're going to build it into the price of your ticket as an experience. And then, so for me, as a passenger, I'm not stressed out, well, is the TSA line really long today? Is the plane going to be delayed? Because it's going to go into the whole time of travel. With the hospitality industry, you'll see something very similar, where if you're staying at Acme Hotel, they'll pick you up at the airport similar to Disney and take you there, because they'll be able to optimize their revenue per available, they'll know when you're going to arrive and when you're going to leave, to have that consistent experience. So if you're going on a vacation, you're staying at the Acme Hotel, it's similar to Disney, your experience starts when you leave the airport.
Sounds like Florida's got a pretty exciting decade or two ahead.
Grayson, can you give me a quick summary of what you see the timeline being and how the evolution of this technology is going to roll out over, say, the next 1 to 3 to 5 to 7 years, what it's going to look like?
Sure. So in the next 2 years, you will see highly geofenced areas with autonomous vehicles running maybe 5 square miles, 6 square miles, 7 square miles with 2 safety drivers, not 1 safety driver. 5 years, you will probably go down to 1 safety driver, 25 to 35 mile geofence, and 6 to 7, you're probably going to push 100 mile geofence, but I think geofence is really important. These vehicles will not operate outside of where they've been mapped, where they've been tested. And then when we get past that 7 to 8 year mark, that's when I think some really special things are going to happen. But what you said with timelines is important, but the industry has made a lot of mistakes when it comes to putting a timeline on everything. Last week, GM Cruise and Dan Amon, who's the CEO of Cruise, came out and said, our vehicles are not going this year. We're delaying it. That's their 4th delay in a row. So I think from the public's perspective, we have to set the expectations of when these vehicles are going to operate, and that they're going to operate in geofences. Of course, they're not going to operate anywhere you want to go. But the next 10 years are going to be really special for what comes online.
Well, thank you very much, Grayson, for coming today and sharing your